a dysfunctional family. I can't imagine who hasn't, right? It was never to the extreme that I would see with these kids. When they were a danger to themselves or others, we had to restrain them. And I was like, wait, what? And I remember like on the second day of work, I had to take training on how to take down a kid.
Oof, I'm just going to say it. Some people have no business having children. There you go. Said it. Hey, today, how are you? You hanging in there? You doing all right? Thanks for tuning in. We are talking with my college friend, Rob. He's going to talk about growing up in a drug-infested small town, his first job in a group home, how he became an educator, and how he has spearheaded various nonprofits to give back to the surrounding communities. We're going to reminisce about our college days along the way. It's a good chat. Check out RobLive. That's his YouTube podcast. Don't do it now, though, obviously. Listen to this chat. It's a good one. Stay with me. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. Welcome. Welcome, my friend Robert Isquierdo. Or should I call you Roberto?
Roberto. That was only for Menlo. That was, we had to meet the quota, right? Are you drinking tea?
Yeah, herbal, darling. It's a bit late.
Oh, it's not Tetley's. Remember
No,
Tetley's tea?
these days I drink the Yorkshire tea.
So Lucy was my British college crash course. Yeah, I thought that Ted Lasso was gonna drink it like that, and his disdain for tea kind of threw me off on the show. I thought he was gonna love tea because I think for as Americans we picture it with the water and the honey and the sugar, but when we try it with the cream and sugar, it's delicious. I prefer it over coffee to this day.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, good on you.
And then I remember we had minced meat pie. Mince, yeah, your mom would make mince meat pie. That was amazing.
Are you sure she made it?
That's what she said. Unless she went to the local pub and then brought it in with foil paper and just kind of put it in. I don't know. I think she made it. I think I.
You've mentioned this before, and I'm like, yeah, my mum has a very small sort of repertoire of cooking, and I I question that. We should give her a call.
Yeah, put her on the phone. It was mincemeat pie because it was my birthday and she knew I loved it. And then also she would make shepherd's pie.
Right. She is, yeah, she makes a decent shepherd's pie.
So the other thing that I learned, and I was showing my kids this was Boxing Day. You guys have those crackers. So I remember being at your house and we popped it open and there was a little crown inside made of paper, and then everybody reads their joke. Do you remember that?
Yeah. We usually get those out on Christmas. That is an incomplete Christmas if you're not pulling your Christmas cracker before your meal.
So that all that was like that was my education. So anyone who asked me anything British and I happen to know, they're like, how the hell aren't you from like London, California? I'm like, yeah, but you know, I had some people who were well versed in all things British, and I was blessed to experience that with you guys. So I'm always grateful for that. Thank you.
Oh, likewise, Rob. I learned a lot from your family, very loving and warm. And your mum makes lovely tamales. They are delicious.
Okay, so here's what's funny about that. I question that as well because her cooking repertoire is very small. So
No,
I
I
question.
saw Gloria making them. I saw her.
Oh, you saw? Okay, yeah. Growing up, I grew up in a small community, and I'm sure you came to visit at least once when we were in college. London, California. Did you get to come to London?
Yeah, we got pulled over by cops.
In
Do you
London,
remember that?
you know what? We both have patchy memories, and we're just filling it in for each other. This one I don't recall at all, but very, very believable that it happened. Okay, so I grew up in London, small rural community. I want to say 95% farm laborers populate that community. My mom, being the exception, she was an RN, a registered nurse. The way we ended up there, I don't know if I ever shared the story, is they had a trailer park. So London has, housing and it has a trailer park. And my mom purchased her first home, which was not really a home, a trailer, but she didn't have any land to put it on. And the only community that had an open space, an open lot in their trailer park was London. And so she went from Selma, Kingsburg, nearby communities to London there first. Then the government came up with a program where you could build your own home, right, for very low cost. And so they built that first house in London amongst other neighbors in the community. And so then that's where I was raised. And I stayed in London until 18 years old. And London was known at that time in the Central Valley of California as the drug capital. So if anything was, I mean, I don't know what word you guys used back in the day. If there was no drugs to be bought, it was called dry. We called it, if the valley was dry, quote unquote, then you had to go to London because London was never dry. There was always a surplus of drugs that you could purchase there.
Like
And
what
so
kind of drugs?
back in the day, the go-to was obviously weed, but you could also get coke and meth. Those were the big three back in the day. I'm not sure what it is now, but during that time, I remember um, I had many. I don't know if you want to call them guardian angels or what, but many people in my life who were like, I know that this is here and I know that it's around us, but this is not for you. And I remember, more than once uh, wanting to fit in and trying to experiment and try things. And my brother and others in the community be like, yeah, no, he's got to go. And I'd be like, well, what's going on? I thought we're all doing this. Like, no, you're out. You can't be here. And it was just this weird thing because even the hardest of drug dealers and criminals that we knew, who could easily make money off me or at least, give me some, refused to allow me to
They
partake.
were protecting you.
Yeah, and I feel blessed now. At the time, I felt left out. Like, hey, like what's wrong with me? And they were like, no, there's just you got other things that you need to take care of. You need to do. So I'm grateful that they saw something in me before I saw it in myself. And my brother threatened many people and said, hey, listen, I ever catch you partying with my brother, right? You're gonna have to deal with me. And he was, Gus, he's a big tough guy, so nobody really wanted to mess with me. And then it became to the point where I was like, I didn't want to mess with it once I was in the habit of avoiding it. And some of my friends got addicted. I remember one of the most heartbreaking things that happened to me in London was after I left to college. I came home and my dad said somebody broke in the house and stole. This how long ago this was? Stole our VCR. Remember VCRs? Well, they stole our VCR, and I come to find out later it was my best friend from London, Che. I don't know if you got a chance to meet Che Lopez. He was, he was drugged out. He was strung out, desperate for money. He had spent multiple nights at my home growing up. He knew where things were. He broke in and stole our VCR. And I felt very betrayed and violated at the time. And of course, as you get older and wiser and understand that, we are not always ourselves. Sometimes we're in temporary altered states, and that we cannot personalize those actions that are done against us when somebody's under the influence as much as they feel personal. And so I remember picking him up from jail years later. He had done like a stint for about 5 years. A lot of drug sales was most of what he was in trouble for. And when I picked him up, he said, hey, I've really been craving one of those Carl's Jr. Bacon Western cheeseburgers. So we stopped to eat one. And as we're eating, he's like, hey, you remember back in the day when somebody broke in your house and took the VCR? I was like, yeah. And he's like, that was me. And we just kind of paused, had that moment. And I said, well, that was a long time ago. Like, why would you tell me? Because he says, because I needed you to know. I need you to forgive me. And he's like, bro, it's done. I drove 3 hours to pick you up from jail. Clearly all is forgiven. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember being very jealous of your high school years.
Why?
Or it might have been earlier than that you used to tell me about, because in that 90s, late 80s, early 90s, it was like the rave scene, right?
The rave scene,
And,
yeah, sure.
and we were now in America living this kind of watered down commercial version of a rave, whereas you were like in the grassroots farmhouse, middle of nowhere with like proper DJs in the actual raves, the original. And I remember being very jealous of that, like, man, you guys got the real deal. And we kind of have, because then they would turn the nightclubs into kind of this ravey thing to commercialize it and make money in the US. And you were like, bro, and you used to be like, this is not a rave. And I go, what do you mean? She's like, no, you have to be in like a dodgy warehouse in the back roads of England. That's a rave. And I was like, what? I remember like envying that. You had introduced me to an artist named Jamiroquai. Remember Jamiroquai?
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, you introduced me to that artist, and I was like, oh my God, this band is amazing. This sound is amazing. The things this guy's singing about, this was like what 20 years ago. Emergency on Planet Earth. And I remember reading the album cover. You told me a story that you were at Glastonbury, huge festival, right? Huge festival, open field, and that you were there, and Jamiroquai came on stage, and it had been kind of cloudy that day, and that he broke into the song, or the group broke into the song "Sunny."
Yeah, Sonny, you're
Yeah,
gonna brighten up my
and
day.
you told me that literally clouds started to move and the sun came out. You immortalized that guy for me in that moment. I said, "Who is this guy?" I really that really affected me. I remember that to this day. I'm still a fan of the music, and I try to share it with some of my kids. My birthday comes up, and I'm like, "Hey, they're going to be in the city in San Francisco. Let's go check them out." And I can't remember the name of the club, but the logo of the club was like a little mermaid. It's me and you. We're excited, and we can't get in. They're sold out. And you're asking people in line if they have any tickets to sell. And this guy walks by and he's like, "Where are you from?" And then you told him where you were from in England. And he's like, "Whoa." And he had like friends there, or he immediately connected with you. And he goes, "Check it out. I'm going to put you guys on the guest list." And we're like, "Yeah, right." Because we didn't know who it was, and we didn't know what that meant. And then we wait about 10, 15 minutes and just very like, I don't know, suspiciously approach. And we're like, is there a Lucy friend plus one? And the guy's like, "Yeah, you're right here. Go on in." And I look at you and you look at me like, "Oh." And we're still not sure who this is. Then they had a DJ and we're kind of hanging out and having a drink or so. And then the curtain opens up. The same guy that gave you the tickets is sitting behind the drum kit. It's Derek from Jamiroquai. Have you told people this story?
Yeah, I have. I've told this story a few times. You know what's funny? It's like we're such huge fans of Jamiroquai, yet we didn't recognize Derek, the drummer.
Oh my God. Isn't that like a legendary story? And I remember that somebody had given JK up front, they'd given him a basket of fruit, and he's singing with a basket of fruit, and he throws like an apple or an orange, and you caught it. Remember that? You caught the
Really?
fruit.
I don't
Yeah,
remember that.
you had a piece of fruit from his basket. I was like, what the hell? This night can't get any better. And we just ate it, and it was fun. But going back to leaving London, to say all that is that none of that happens if I didn't have, that the guts to leave, and that's a very hard thing for a small town boy, and because you have two mindsets, in small towns. You have, I can't wait to get the hell out of here, and the other mindset is, I have everything I need, and this is safe and familiar, right? Those are the two mindsets. Typically, the safe and familiar mindset never leaves and they stay home, right? For whatever reason, I was the safe and familiar, and all my friends were there. And yet there was this deep sense inside of me, like, you have to go. If you don't leave, you're gonna find yourself in some trouble here. I ended up at a junior college in the Central Coast, Pismo area, Rio Grande, Santa Maria, called Hancock, and I was playing what you guys call footy.
Footy.
We call it soccer, right? So I was playing soccer there for 2 years, met some great friends there, and then started to get that kind of bug, like the travel bug, like, oh, I want to explore places. And I think that's the major advantage to growing up in Europe, because I've studied Europeans now up close now, knowing you and others, and realized just how uh, culturally diverse, just by nature, you guys are, and just open to, like, if there was a bunch of guys from my hometown and people from your hometown, and there was some foreign food thrown in front of us, your group is more likely to just try it and like, oh yeah, let's go. Now here's my theory behind that. When I finally did make it to Europe years later, I found that the distance between countries with vastly different cultures and foods was hours. You're in Germany or Belgium, and it's a completely different life and culture. And so you guys are very comfortable in that idea that you embrace these cultures and that diversity exists and that there's a world bigger than just your country, as opposed to the way I was raised. And I met Menlo. that first semester and I meet my lifelong friends, Eric Aldana and Mike Esparza, along with Jared Howe, who all three I still talk to and am close to this day. I met them there that first semester at Menlo College, and it was the greatest gift. Fall semester, I believe, is when you and Evan and Claudia, you guys all arrived, I think, that next fall, correct? Is
Yeah.
when you transferred in. And then we all met and started hanging out. And I remember the first time meeting you and Evan, you guys were always like, two peas in a pod, always together. The most distinguishing feature to this day, I remember you had I want to believe like a sun tattoo.
Oh, I hate that fucking tattoo.
You did?
I
You
fucking hate it.
do? Okay, so you had a sun tattoo, and I was like, what? Where on earth is this person from? I'd never seen anything. The style, the look, the whole thing. You and Evan hanging out, and then getting to meet you guys. It was another again eye-opening experience because you guys had your own group of friends and influences and ideas that you guys introduced me and Mike and Eric and all of us to. And I want to say about the second or third year, it became kind of like this group of people with the Kev Cooks and the Bens and the Louise from the bagel shop, right?
Oh yeah, shout out to Weezer. That year was the first ever women's footy, and the Weeze came with us a couple of times on away games. She did not go to Menlo College. She came and played for us. She was good. We needed her.
I never knew that. I did not know. Yeah, she was good. So you were on the soccer team with Evan, and then you guys apparently brought in some people from the. I don't. Okay, so here's what I do remember: this extreme version of the haves and the have-nots, because you had the kids who were there and were paying full tuition because they had the means to pay full tuition. So it was about 20,000 a year, and then you had the financial aid people. That was us, the financial aid where we were getting loans, we're getting some Menlo aid, we are getting help to be
I
there.
know that divide existed, but did you feel it though? I didn't.
I only felt it, and I tell you, there was little instances when I felt it, and it was always when it came down to like finances and those conversations. And what I mean by that is like, I remember one time it's like, hey, let's go to the city, and I was like, oh yeah, I can't go this week, and they're like, why? I don't have any money right now, and they're like, oh, it's okay, we'll stop at the
If you don't
ATM.
have any money, I'm skint.
And then I also remember going to a house party, and at this house, we were in Atherton, right, which per square capita is one of the wealthiest areas in the United States. And one of the kids had a home down the street, and we went to the party. And I remember walking in, and I saw the living room and the layout. And then to my right, there was a giant glass wall, and it was a racquetball court inside the house. A huge full-size racquetball court indoor, and there was a swimming pool in the back, and everybody was partying in the back around the pool. Now I don't know how much I shared with you after graduating, but I graduated from Menlo in 97, and so it was this all-time high of social connections and just love and fun with all of you guys. And then as I graduate, I'm going back to London because I realized that the rent in Atherton and Menlo Park is insane. So I had to go back to London, California, not England, right? And I remember going back to London and just kind of being a little depressed, like, man, like the party's over. The honest truth was I was there for the sports and the socializing and the fun and the connections, and the academic stuff was just kind of secondary. And so I hadn't done any internships. I wasn't really positioned to do anything. And so when I get back, I must have been unemployed for like the first 6 months. And now here I am on my brother's couch. And so I finally end up at a group home. I'm working at a group home, and this group home has uh, adolescents 12 to 18 years old. And it's boys' side and girls' side. They're separate, and they have chemical dependency issues and emotional issues. Because I had been around, I grew up in a dysfunctional family. I can't imagine who hasn't, right? It was never to the extreme that I would see with these kids. And what I learned from these kids is that as bad as things would get for them, they knew how to let things go a lot better than I did. And I'll give you an example. When they were a danger to themselves or others, we had to restrain them. And I was like, wait, what? And I remember like on the second day of work, I had to take training on how to take down a kid where you don't.
Whoa.
And I'm like, wait a minute, this what I signed up for. I didn't have any other job, so I had to take it. And so I remember, and so you're with them 12 hours a day, right? And they live in this place. It's a dormitory setting, and they have their counselor, their psychologist, and they have us regular college graduates who present to be their day to day, help them clean up.
So, what's your title at this job?
Day counselor.
I know you left college with a BA, no, a BS in psychology.
But here's what I found out, that there were only like 2 or 3 of us who had degrees, 4-year BAs. Everyone else was just high school graduates.
What?
And I was like, wait, what? You don't have to have a degree? They go, no, not for this job. And I was like, why was it so hard for me to get in? Because I had to bug them for like 4 months to get in. But once I got in, I was like, oh. And so, yeah, you could just be a high school graduate and be there. And so I didn't even need my degree for that. But this is how it plays into it. I'll tell you in a minute. So I'm there, and I remember this one time there was this kid named Tommy. And these kids, the whole thing for them is their free day pass to have a visitation with their parents or to go home for a day or two, right? Yeah, because they're all homesick. And so they told this kid, listen, you violated one of our rules here for whatever reason. You're not going to be able to have that day visit with your mom tomorrow. And again, that was everything to Tommy. And so Tommy kind of sat down and kind of stewed in that for a second, and I could see anger building in him. So I kept an eye on him. And he gets up and just went to the nearest kid. This kid had nothing to do with it, but the nearest kid, him, Alex, and he just starts punching him.
Oh.
Right. So I'm like, oh, here we go. It's time to restrain someone. So I go to restrain this kid, and I'm doing a traditional American football tackle because that's all I know, right? It's not working because this kid is angry strong. So he's got the strength of a grown man, and he was a pretty good sized kid. So luckily, he looked at me as not a source of threat, but just something in his way. And so he's going after this kid, and I'm grabbing onto his legs, and he's dragging me across the floor. And I'm wearing shorts for whatever reason, and it's carpet. So I'm getting all these rug burns on my legs, and and I finally, clamp him in and knock him down. Everyone else jumps in and we restrain him, and he's screaming and, just anger. And I'm terrified. I'm just traumatized by this whole experience. And then we take Tommy and we put him in his room, and there's like I don't think we had a padded room, but we had a room to put him in to calm him. And I cannot sleep that night, Lucy, because I'm like, I've got to go back and work with this kid tomorrow. He's going to kill me, right? He's going to be so upset. I get back there the next day shivering inside, but I'm keeping a calm exterior. And he says, hey, Rob, do you want to play ping pong? And I freeze for a second because I'm like, is this a trap? Like, how does this work? Is this how you lure me in? And I very cautiously walk over and pick up the ping pong paddle, and I start rallying back and forth with him. And I'm not even paying attention to the game. I'm reading his body language. I'm trying to read his eyes. What I saw in his eyes was he was completely done with what happened yesterday. It had no bearing on our relationship today. It was a new day. We're moving forward. And he'd almost like forgotten what had happened. And it taught me a lot in that moment, because I've always been a very sensitive person. And growing up, if someone slighted me, oh man, I'd remember for the next 2 years, And here's this kid in a group home setting in the worst conditions possible with the ability to just let things go.
Oh man, that's survival. What were these kids doing in there in the first place?
Sometimes it was a crime. Like we had kids, I had one kid who had a violent crime where he had, murdered someone, but they couldn't necessarily prove it. So he was in the juvenile system. And then they thought we can probably rehabilitate him better in a group home setting. And so Eddie was his name, and he was there. And then the other kids were CPS, where they were taken from their parents because their parents had chemical dependency issues, and the kid was no longer safe in the home, and so those type of kids would be there as well. And every single one of them had some sort of major issue that they were working through, right, emotionally. And so they all had counselors and psychologists. And there was a girl who ran away once. You could see she was very needy, and her parents, she couldn't stay with them, but her boyfriend picked her up, and she was 15 and he was like 23, right?
No.
And he picked her up, and you could run away. It's called going AWOL. So you could take off running, and our job was to stop you from running away. And sometimes they would do it just for attention, but she actually got away, and her boyfriend was down the street in a car. He picked her up and they left. She was found a week later, stabbed multiple times in a ditch, left, and she died.
Oh my
So
God.
that was very shocking for me because I'd never met a murder victim that I knew personally, right? She was the first.
Did the boyfriend do it?
Yeah, it was the boyfriend.
Fuck.
And we believe now that it wasn't necessarily a boyfriend, but a human trafficking situation. But you know how they manipulate you and make you feel like they care about you, right? So there was a lot of real traumatic things that I went through there, um, through the kids, not in my own personal life, but being there, and it got really heavy. And so then I was starting to try to look for a different thing, something else I could do, because although I wanted to help these kids, it was starting to affect my personal life because it's hard to leave that at home, right? You just or
I mean,
work.
how do you compartmentalize
You
that?
can't not be healthy.
Right?
So I'm like, okay, I need to find my next thing. And so one of the guys, a supervisor there, because you had a supervisor then us underneath the supervisor, named Andy. He was saying, hey, who has a 4-year degree? And I said, oh, I have one. And he's like, why aren't you working at our high school? And I'm like, I don't have a credential. He's like, you can be a substitute teacher at our high school without a credential, 4-year degree. And I'm like, really? So I signed up for that. And now on campus, we had a high school, little tiny high school, about 7 classes, right? And I start working there as a substitute teacher. And I started to realize that maybe becoming an educator is a better way for me to reach these students. My first or second week as a teacher there was this girl named Nancy, 14 years old, 15. And I remember I've been there for 2 days, 1 or 2 days, and she leaves a note on my desk. And it was one of those, those folded up notes that you do when it's like the love letter. And I'm thinking, oh, she found a note on the floor somewhere and she's turning it in. So after class, I open it up and the note says, my love, finally, we can be together. We no longer have to hide what's happening between us. It's time to let the world know about us. So she's writing this delusional letter as if,
To you?
yes, as if we've been together this whole time. I met her a week ago. I've got to turn this in right away. Anyone who might accidentally come across this letter would think that we have an ongoing relationship. So I go and I turn it in and I tell the principal. Luckily, the principal goes, okay, well, you're the next flavor of the week. So she had a record of connecting with our male staff,
Oh, that breaks my heart.
just to kind of give you an idea of what the mindset was for some of our students. I had another student, he gave me a look of sheer hate and disdain. He was a Mexican kid, so I knew it wasn't a racial thing. And I hadn't said a word to him, and he's giving you, that kind of mad dog look when you want to fight someone. And again, he wasn't the gangster tough type. He was a regular kid, but he hated me. And I could feel his hate. And anytime I tried to ask him to do anything or redirect his behavior, it was either a F you or you can't tell me what to do. It was just and if it was anyone else, he was fine with them. And so I'm trying to jog my memory. Did we have an incident? Is there something I don't know about? It gets so bad that finally they had to have an intervention between me, him, and a psychologist. And he goes on to tell a psychologist that I look exactly like his stepfather. Beat the hell out of him. His stepfather was the reason he was there. And so every time he saw me, it was a reminder of that stepfather and all the abuse.
Oh, Jesus.
I learned a lot there. So anyway, the key to all of that experience was it kind of gave me this taste of being an educator, running a classroom, and the influence that you could have in that space if you use it appropriately. And so then Mike and Eric, as you know from college, this whole time they had never left the Bay Area. They were living in Sunnyvale, California. After about 2 years of the group home, I leave and I move to Sunnyvale, back in the Bay Area, and it was a breath of fresh air and to be around my two best friends again. And then it was a series of just a great 3 to 5 year run. And during that time, I'm subbing as a teacher, and then slowly getting my credential and becoming an educator. Is something I never thought I'd do. It was more of something that kind of picked me rather than me picking it instead. And I feel like, Lucy, one of the things that I've always done my whole life that I really have learned not to do so much is I've always tried to really force things. Like
Mm.
I watch a movie and I want my life to be like the movie, and so I'm going to force this particular scenario, and the universe will push back. Like, no, that's not really you. That's not really going to work. And I don't know how much you know about. Um, Did you know that I met a teacher and we were married?
I do. I remember she had an unusual name, Pfizer.
Liza, yeah. We were married and we were living in the Bay Area. And then my brother says, let's move to Los Angeles and I can help you buy your first car and home, because the Bay Area, as you know, prices were we were on a 10-year plan to purchase anything. And so we moved to Los Angeles. We leave teaching, and now we're both working for my brother, a mortgage company, and I didn't know anything about it. And it was just, okay, here's the basics, get on the phone and sell this loan, help people refinance. So I'm like, all right, but my education is very minimal on this. He goes, you don't need to know anything except how to sell. So basically the way it works is, right, you qualify the person who's trying to purchase the loan with their credit score and their debt to income ratio, how much they owe versus how much they make, right? And then if they qualify, you have different types of loans they can get into. One of them, which is the safest one, is the loan where the interest rate is fixed for 30 years. It doesn't change. The safest one to get into, right, is currently what I use on my home. But then there's, if you want to be a little bit more, you want to be riskier and qualify for some different things, you can get, one that's fixed for 5 years, and then it becomes a variable, right? When you sell those type of loans, the banks, they like that. So they pay you a
Yeah.
bigger commission when you're selling those versus a 30-year, right? And after about 2.5 years, 3 years, it was very chaotic. It was very stressful. It changed who I was as a person, and not for the better. And it ultimately destroyed the marriage, because again, like I told, I became a different person. Even my closest friends were like, well, you're making a lot of money and you're making it in a way that does not necessarily help others. And so you start to prioritize the money and that lifestyle over what's best for your customer, right? And so you kind of get into this cycle of, oh, well, I've spent what I have and I need more because I want to maintain this certain lifestyle that I thought is what I wanted. And I want to say that one of my best months, I believe I received a check for $17,000 for one month's work, right? And at the time, for me, that was like, oh my God. And so what do? I buy 7 pairs of Air Jordans, not stock, right? Not investing in property, not, just my theory behind that, Lucy, is that for some people, when you go many years without, right, college, you're kind of sacrificing because you can't work full time. If you come from a middle to lower income home, you're sacrificing, and now you're able to buy anything you want. Well, you kind of revert back to the things you wanted as a child. And so here I was with 7 different pairs of shoes, right? Like that's my biggest investment. And then I buy the house and I bought a new car. I was kind of smarter on the car. I didn't go crazy on the car. And so the only to give you an idea of how lucrative it was at the time, I remember going to my brother's house and he had this huge kind of mansion type home in Valencia, California. And I remember going in his garage, and at that time he had a Bentley, he had a Rolls Royce Phantom, and then he had a bright yellow Hummer. And these were all at the same time in his house, right? And I'm like, what the hell? that time, that was kind of the path we were all on. And it was, for me, it was a very destructive, very selfish path. And it was all about me. And I just think that that wasn't my
No,
nature.
you're a giver. You're
That's what I
sympathetic.
thought. And so this felt like this new was, it was kind of like, I want to be the bad guy now and I want to take and, because I feel like the nice guy was to some degree in my worldly vision was finishing last. Not realizing all the blessings I had, right? I was just looking at the material side of things.
So tell us what happened, with the housing crisis in 2008 and your job.
I lost two homes. My car was repossessed. I claimed bankruptcy, rock bottom. And rock bottom and leaving, there's just this peace in my heart that I was like, it's finally over, right? I now have an excuse to stop this rat race. I was the lowest in my life, but there was relief. And then the marriage is gone, and I start to build back up, and I want to get back into education. I get back in education. I meet Pearl, which is my wife now, right? She was an escrow officer, and I met her towards the end of my time in the business, and we started to build something together. And I remember having my first child, Jaden, in 2008. In the midst of all this, right? Or, I'm sorry, correction, 2007. In the midst of all this bankruptcy and losing everything, here I am bringing a child into the world. Probably the worst time to bring a child into the world financially, and but emotionally seeing him for the first time. And it sounds like a movie, because you hear this from people, but the way I describe it is that I thought I had experienced love, unconditional love, prior with different relationships in my life, but the level of love and devotion and connection and commitment and sacrifice that I was willing to give this tiny being, it changed me. I felt that transition in my heart, and it's made me a much better person than I would have ever been just on my own.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, having a child, your priorities become very clear very quickly.
Yes, that's there. You should have said it. That was it exactly. And it changed. And so now I'm like, I'm going back to education. I want to. I need to be a better person, because I know that this child is going to, over the years, internalize what they're seeing from me, and I need that to be good. It has to be good. And so I start taking this different path, and I get into education. Now, here's the craziest story about my first real job. So I'm a substitute teacher, and I'm getting substitute pay. I'm working so many hours as a substitute, it's almost like a regular teacher pay, but I'm not credentialed. I applied for this high school position at a local high school in Santa Clarita called Golden Valley High School. And I knew the principal and I knew some of the teachers because I'd been doing long-term jobs there as a substitute. But I remember walking into the interview. You know how you're in the interview waiting room and it's you and the other people interviewing. And I strike up a conversation, and this man, he's older than me. He looks accomplished. He's got the briefcase. I go, this guy looks like a college professor. And so sure enough, as we get to talking, he's at Cal Northridge. He's a professor, been there for 20 years. I almost left
Why?
because I'm like, this guy, I'm working on my credential. He's got 20 years in at a college level. He is by far going to be the most qualified individual in that room. And so I'm like, I don't really have a chance, but I didn't leave because I really needed the job. So he goes in, he comes out, and they're doing, that when you hear the interview over and the door opens and they're all kind of laughing and shaking hands.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is bad. They love him. They absolutely love him. And I go in and I sit there, and it's the principal. His name was Sal Frias. He's still the principal of Golden Valley High School. A little bit older than me, Latino male, came from a similar background. And I'm like, if there's anything that's going to help me, is he's going to see a little bit of himself in me, right? That's the only thing that can help me in this situation. Plus, I'm willing to coach because, I was familiar with football and soccer. And so I could coach those sports if he needed. Now, if there's anything I knew about the high school level is that they have a really hard time sometimes finding on-campus staff members who are also willing to coach because it's a whole nother workload to be a high school teacher and a coach. I left there going, that was great practice. I'm going to get the next one because now the nerves are gone. I know what to say next time. I'm already planning the next move. And as I'm calling around for different jobs, a couple days later, the secretary calls me from Golden Valley High School, and she says, "Hey, listen, we want to hire you." And I remember I was really stressed out that day because I was thinking, what am I going to do? We need benefits for the kids, and as you know, teaching benefits tend to be really good. And now we have two children at this point, and as she's telling me, I'm watching my son. We were at a local arboretum for the day. They have like free Tuesday, and they were running around playing, and my wife was there with them. And I remember when he's telling me that I'm getting the job, I'm starting to tear up because I can't believe I'm getting this. I mean, it's like I felt like I won the lottery. And and they said, we need you to start Monday. I said, I'll be there at 3 a.m. on Monday. Right. So excited. And they're like, all right. And I get off the phone and I remember little Jaden, he's maybe like 2 or 3 at the time. He runs up to me. He's like, Mommy, Daddy's crying. Daddy's crying. Something happened. He's hurt. Right. They thought I was crying because I was hurt or something. And Pearl's like, what? She's like, it's okay. Like, you'll get the next one. Because she thinks it's frustration, tear. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. They gave it to me. She's like, see, I knew you'd get it. I go, no, you don't know the guy that was in that room. So later on, I ended up teaching there for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And when I got more comfortable, I asked them, I said, hey, why didn't you hire the college professor? And they said he was coming in for a shorter commute. His reasons were not about the kids. He said, we didn't care about your qualifications. We needed somebody who cared about our kids, and we picked the right guy. And I was, you know, I get teared up even thinking about how it all played out. And so,
Oh, you totally deserve that job. You are so caring and just so dedicated to what you do. And it's remarkable that, looking from the outside, you didn't see that in yourself and you were surprised you got that job. You earned it. You are worthy.
I didn't see that. Yeah. It didn't feel that way at the time. At the time, I was very merit based in my mindset, which was,
Merit based. What do you mean? Like on paper?
yeah, on paper, if you had me on paper, then it was a wrap. It was done. All the intangibles were not playing in my head, you know, because it was the intangibles that were distinguishing. It wasn't the on paper, because on paper, he had whooped my ass. It was done. And so that's what I was thinking about at the time. And so I ended up staying there for about 5 years, and then I move on to a junior high school. And then I was getting to the point where I wanted to do more because I'm trying to help the kids in the classroom, but then I see all the needs they have after school, right?
Like what?
So if you go to a broken home,
Mm.
you've got a lack of food, and you've got a lack of academic support and resources to do homework and other things. So I'm like, what can we provide these students beyond just a classroom? And so I started prayer, right? I started to really start to connect on a spiritual level, because I never prayed before. I grew up Catholic, but it was more like a kind of routine. And I was like, all right, well, let me embrace what this really could be like. And so my brother invites me to go to this church with him. I'm like, dude, I'm not, I don't know if this is gonna work, but I wanted to spend time with my brother because he was really reclusive at the time. So he could have invited me to go wash toilets, and I would have said, yeah, let's go. So it didn't matter. That was just a chance to hang with him. And so we went to this church called Real Life that he liked to go to. And while I was there with him, it wasn't like a traditional pastor or priest, open the Bible and read a verse. It felt like a stand-up comedian with a serious message because it was humorous, it was heartfelt, and I felt like he was speaking to me. And some of the observations that you made today about, you know, my my thinking that I'm the only one struggling, or that I lacked qualifications because I didn't have it on paper. All these shortcomings this guy was bringing up, and I felt like he was talking to me. And it's like, did somebody tell him I was coming today? It really hit me. So I started going back again and again, and really trying to connect to this spiritual side of myself. And I've never really believed in this whole idea of that I could speak to the Lord, right? Like, what are you talking about? Is there a voice from the clouds? Or like, what are you talking about when you say talking to God? I didn't know what that meant, any of that. And I said, all right, well, all I'm going to do is I'm going to try and pray and see what happens. And I remember, do you remember the movie Boogie Nights? We went to go see that together. You remember Boogie Nights?
Yeah, it's a great movie. I love that
Mark
movie.
Wahlberg, he's a porn star. Okay, so there's a scene where he's in a hot tub and he closes his eyes because they say, hey, what's your stage name going to be? And he's like, when I close my eyes, I see in like bright lights, Dirk Diggler, right? And then they show it in bright lights. Well, it was like that in my head as I was like, okay, what is my path?
So what was in bright lights in your head?
The word serve, SERVE. And I was like, am I supposed to be a chef? Do I go back to waiting tables? What does this all mean? And then it was slowly revealed to me that it meant that if I really wanted to be who I'm supposed to be, I'm supposed to serve others. And as I look back, that's when I've been most happiest, serving others to some different capacity, because it makes me feel useful. It makes me feel like I have a purpose, right? And so I was like, okay, so how do I serve others? Like, I'm a teacher. Is there anything else I can do? And then I went to this multi-million-dollar library that just opened up. It was a grand opening. And my 3 kids were there, and they're going up the escalator. There's an escalator in this library and a fireplace. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. It said, what are the children of your hometown, London? What do they have? My kids have this. What do they have? Not a damn thing. And so the mission was, I'm going to get a library in my hometown.
And you did it, and you rallied the troops, and you did it, Rob, and you built that library. I mean, that's remarkable. Hats off to you. Seriously, remarkable.
Yeah, that was my nonprofit boot camp, right? It was like a 4-year period of learning how to use social media to help with that. And then we got it done. Like you said, we got it done. And that really boosted my confidence in that area, that I could like create something and make it a reality with the right people and friends and connections. And then that leads up to today, where I continue that with another nonprofit that we've had for 10 years now, called Reestablishing Stratford. Stratford is a small community that looks just like London, but it's in an adjacent county called Kings County. It's right next to, it's about 25 minutes from London. And my mom lives there, Gloria. She's from Stratford. Yeah, shout out to Gloria Racy. And so then we started that. We hit our 10th year anniversary this month, December. And we've done a lot of amazing things there with Stratford. It's been very rewarding. It's been an amazing journey. And I'm just really grateful that I met you and people who are kind of kindred spirits in this idea that we have a heart not only for journey and discovery, but also for others. And it just reminds me, like, there's a reason we're all still connected, that we're still talking to each other to this day, 25 years later, is because we're all kind of trying to find new and different ways to connect with the people around us and serve them in our own capacity. One thing that I really kind of built my confidence as well is your photography.
Oh, yeah.
Used to do different shots and pictures and stuff. And I remember one time he said, "Hey, I need to use you for this project in school." And I'm like, "Me?" It's like, "Yeah." And it was it was different, but
It
it
was
was
different.
it was this idea that like, hey, you're worthy of being the focus of this portfolio or this vision, and for somebody who's struggling with self-esteem or whatever, it kind of like, oh man, maybe there's something to me more than I thought there was.
Oh, no, no, thank you for trusting me with your image. There were quite a few that did that, and I feel privileged that they all agreed to do that for me. It was an exhibit called The Body. I didn't show any faces, so there was a degree of anonymity there.
Yeah.
But still, that was brave of you, Rob. I really didn't know you felt that way. Your self
Well, it's
confidence.
it's not you try not to advertise too heavily on that. When you suffer from that publicly, it's very unattractive to people around you. Like friends don't want to spend any time with the mopey, woe is me guy. So the way I was able to keep relationships and connection with people is to not, which goes to show today. Now, remember we're going to talk about this green thing here, right? This is did you know that lime green is the color for mental health awareness?
No.
So you know how pink is breast cancer awareness?
Boobies, yeah.
Yeah, boobies is pink. So the official color for mental health is lime green. And I know why they pick lime green because it just jumps out and doesn't match anything you're ever wearing. And so I went to this 5K run for mental health awareness, and they were passing out these lime green wristbands. And I read who did it. It was Behavioral Health of Kings County. So I went to them and said, "Hey, do you have any more of these?" They're like, "Yeah." And I go, I need as many as you have because I have this idea for my school. And they're like, "What is it?" I said, "I want to have this thing called Mental Health Mondays. So the first Monday of each month, myself and my entire staff at my high school, we will wear these. And they are a nonverbal visual reminder that as teachers, as mentors, as guides, we are open to listening to your struggle. We are open to you seeking us for guidance or support or advice. And although we're not professional counselors or psychologists or therapists, we can be a positive presence in your life. And so we start wearing them, once a month. And then the kids start asking, can we wear them too? And I had a bunch of extras. And so some of my athletes would wear them during their games, basketball, football, whatever. And it's kind of caught on. Mental Health Mondays. I want to expand it now to maybe a nationwide movement where teachers across the country are all designating that first Monday of each month to mental health awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is because the last 10 years, I've had 7 different suicides from people I knew personally.
Jesus.
And prior to that, Lucy, I had not met not one person. I'd never known a suicide victim. And so the last 10 years, I'm like, why is this so prevalent right now? So to just give you a little background, my principal, my newly hired principal, he was in his job for maybe a week. He got called in for an administrative meeting, and they were going to put him on leave while they investigated some acts of misconduct. And he went out to a field near the school and took his own life
What?
with a gun. Yeah, shot himself. So that was jarring because I knew him. I was talking to him yesterday. We knew each other well. And then I had a student in my creative writing class during COVID 2020 when we were all out of school. She took her life. She was in my class. Then I had a friend from my fantasy football league. He took his own life. Recently, my best friend's little brother, who we all grew up with in London, he took his life. And so I'm like, wow, there's definitely something here that we need to address, but I'm not sure what I can do about it. And so this is my first little step into at least trying to create a more inviting environment for people who are struggling. And the funny part is like they think that only because the wristband is on that they can speak to me. That if I happen to remove it, that I'm no longer approachable. Right. And so I might have said, look, the wristband is just a symbolic thing. Like you can go up to any teacher and reach out to them, and I'm sure they'll be there for you. But the kids need that visual. They need that reminder that we're still there. And
People
so
just not talking to each other anymore, just not having deep conversations
they
anymore.
they yeah, I think part of that too is technology, right? Well, we're talking right now, but we're in two different rooms by ourselves. You see what I'm saying? And so those become the relationships for many of these kids is these online relationships. And I guess they're not talking to each other as much as they used to, or maybe they've got more triggers today than we did because of the isolation. Because you think about it, everything that you and I talked about today, phones were never involved in any of that. It was face-to-face conversations and interactions.
Yeah, and with a text, you can't convey sarcasm, humor, any.
Oh, yeah, any tone. Here it is. What's the leading cause of death for youth ages 10 to 24? Injuries, including road traffic injuries and drowning, that's one. And then self-harm is another leading cause. So it's crazy. And I never thought that that would be, the biggest, depression being the most common condition associated with suicide. So that's kind of the mission right now, is to create this mental awareness through whatever platform I can, in this case, the podcast, and try to lower that number, even if it's just by one person.
Now, you mentioned social media. You're talking about your YouTube channel, RobLive, right? This is where you interview lots of people, amazing people with inspirational stories. So, Rob, you're an educator, a non-profit founder, and now you're embarking on this show concept, right?
RobLive. And you know where RobLive came
You
from?
go ahead and tell me, love.
Like Kelly and Regis Live, right? Because I want a live audience, because if I have a strength that I am confident in, is put an audience in front of me. And I can feel that energy and I can feed off of it. And now I do public speaking, like keynote speaking about the library and different things I've done. And this is in front of adults. And I feel very comfortable in
So,
that.
Rob Live, your YouTube podcast, in your wildest dreams, give me a scenario you would like to see where that could potentially go.
One of my favorite Oprah episodes, for a lot of reasons, is you get a car and you get a car. And not that a car is going to solve all your problems, but this idea that if I have a sponsor that is so confident in what I'm doing, that they would give me the resources to be able to help people. And again, I don't know if a short-term gift like a car is really what I'm after. More like long-term stuff, like you get a financial literacy course and you get uh, an English mastery course, and you know what I mean? Like I want to give away gifts that teach people how to fish.
I love it. Put it out there in the universe, Rob.
Rob Live is inspirational interviews, and the idea came from using social media on Facebook mainly, but also my classroom. I feel like I go to school and I tell these real life stories all the time about things that have happened in my life and the people that I know, to be able to inspire my students and make them feel like it's possible, right? And the way I do that is I say, look, at you guys have seen me. I've misspelled words on the board. I've shown up late. I've forgotten assignments. I'm a very flawed human being right before your eyes, kind of like your parents, right? And yet you guys are seeing me accomplish some things that didn't seem likely for a person like me to be able to do, right? And I share those things with you guys, not to impress you, but to impress upon you that you are just as equally capable of accomplishing whatever you're going after if you can see me do it. And so on Rob Live, we've had a guy who lost both legs in Afghanistan, whose aspirations were to become a basketball coach after he got out of the military, and just felt like that was taken from him because his legs were gone. And he found the strength through the birth of his child, and the strength through his wife and partner, who said, you're going to walk again. And he got two prosthetic legs, and he walked onto the set of our show
Yeah.
and told his story. So that's one guy. The last guy I just had, look up this name when you get a chance on IMDb. His name is Tom Nelson. Grew up in Jackson, Mississippi. And as a kid going through college, he was working at a local country club where he had a friend who was kind of the golden boy of their small community, had a scholarship, I believe, for swimming, great grades, everything going for him. He fell in love with one of the members of the country club, and she was an older married woman. So they kind of had this summer fling. And this friend of Tom's, it was more to him. He thought he fell in love. He was obsessed with her, and she kind of ghosted him after a while and said, "Hey, listen, this was kind of a summer thing. I'm moving on now." And he just mentally couldn't process that. Showed up to the country club one day and killed her in front of her friends at the country club. Ended up incarcerated. So Tom, it was such a jarring incident. It's embedded in his mind, and over the years he decides that he has a story, and he turns it into a script, and it gets sold as a made-for-television movie. Came out in 1993, starring Susan Lucci, called Between Love and Hate.
Mate, that's crazy. That's nuts. That is stranger than fiction. Rob, I know you've got so many more stories to tell, but we are seriously running out of time here. I ask all of my guests the same question. Who are you listening to right now? Who's moving you?
Lately, I've been listening to a very soulful singer that I discovered on YouTube named Alan Stone. He's got a great voice, kind of reminds me of Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes. And he's got a great song called American Privilege that I've listened to over and over the last couple of days. And also wanted to share a little bit before we end here about my nonprofit, Reestablishing Stratford. We've been together 10 years strong, serving the small, unincorporated community of Stratford, California. And our goal right now is to get enough resources together to have our own community center. That's the dream. And with that, I want to thank you for putting me on your podcast.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much. You're amazing. Dream big, baby.
Until next time, this is RobLive saying love, peace, and chicken grease.
Yeah. What an amazing fella, right? Check him out on YouTube. RobLive, all one word. Or you can find him at RobLive888. I also want to take this opportunity to express my love to Rob's family. They've been very warm and welcoming to my brother and I. And Gus, I think I stayed with him like most of the summer once. And I know Cynthia drove us to and from college from Southern California up to the Bay Area. And shout out to Nikki and Gloria and Red. Much love to you all.